This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody to this program of the University of Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center. If you don't already know about us, we're a one-stop shop for startups and existing small businesses. We are associated with the University of Arkansas and affiliated with the SBA and statewide ASB TDC, as well as over 1,000 small business centers. Locally, we offer complimentary one-on-one counseling for all your small business needs, from marketing to webinars to financial help, just about anything you need. Make sure that you visit us at sbtdc.uark.edu. So today, I am bringing you Excel 101. And it is one of my favorite classes. I've been doing this since the early 90s. I'm way back then with Lotus and Quattro Pro. So I'm quickly migrated over to Excel. There's a lot to know about Excel, but I think the number one thing I want to make sure that you all know is that there's so many different ways of doing the same thing, and you've got to know that. So I might be showing you a keyboard shortcut, and you might be more comfortable with the menu. So do know that there's about 3 or 4, sometimes 5 or 6 ways of doing the same thing, and you'll get comfortable with how you want to do it. Also, don't worry so much about the steps that I'm talking about today. Excel is so powerful and can do so many things. And so I want to make sure that you know some of the things that it can do. Don't worry about the steps. You can email me. I'll give you my email at the end of this session, or there's a lot of different tools that you can use out there too. So don't worry about the steps as much as focusing on the features. So I'm going to go ahead and share my Excel screen. Okay, all of us have different ways of opening up Excel. For me, I've got an Excel little icon down on my taskbar. You might have to go to your start button or might have an icon out on your desktop. So we're all going to get into Excel just a few different ways. But here is how it's going to look. So when you first open up Excel, this is the screen that you're going to see. And there's a couple different things that you can do. You can either start a blank new workbook, and that's when you're going to start from scratch. Or after you've started a workbook and you have saved it, it will be right down here at the bottom, your most recent spreadsheets that you have started and have saved. So you can also go down here, and then you can also go to open and search your drive. So again, this is going to be the screen that you see at the beginning. You can either start a new workbook, open up an existing one from recently, or go to open and open one that you have created a while back. So what I want to do first is I want to go over the different parts of the screen and some basic technology. And again, if you guys have any questions, you're not going to be rude by unmuting and interrupting me and jumping in. I want to make sure that you guys have all your questions answered either today or through my email after the session. Okay, so up at the top, you'll notice you've got, these are called ribbon bars. It starts off with File, Home, Insert, Draw, and so forth. So what these are pretty much shortcut toolbars. So I'm looking at my home ribbon right now, and these are all the buttons on my home ribbon that I'll commonly use. I spend a lot of time on my home ribbon. This is where I do a lot of my stuff. You might not ever have to go to the data or the review ribbons. The home ribbon is where you'll really spend a lot of your time. But notice I go to Insert and all the buttons change. So these are the common buttons that are used under Insert. You can insert a pivot table, a chart, a lot of different features. And then you'll notice Draw is different. I do use page layout quite a bit. And then formulas, there's just about every formula that you want under the sun right there. And then Data and Review, View, and Help. So again, these are ribbons. Once you click on a ribbon, the name of the ribbon, a whole different slew of buttons will come up for you to use. Now notice also at the bottom of a lot of these sections, you've got these little tiny arrow buttons. Those are dialog buttons. That's how you can get to even more features. So you won't spend a lot of time doing this, but if you do want to click on one of those, you'll see that it will open up a complete different window with even more options, everything that you want to do for the fonts. If I come down here under number, it's the same thing. Okay, so those are just dialog buttons that are going to open up even more options, but probably 99% of the time, you're going to be able to get to the features right out here from your ribbons. Right below there, you've got the formula bar. In this bar, we're going to spend a lot of time in later on when I'm going to do just some basic formulas, but that's also a great bar for editing. So once I start typing in some information, you'll see in there how we can edit some of the information right in there or right inside of the cell that we're typing the information into. Down below, and again, a lot of you guys might already know some of these basics, and I might be covering some stuff that you already know, but I'm going to be throwing in a lot of shortcuts too. So for example, here, each one of these column headings, A, B, C, and D, represent an entire column. Each row, 1, 2, 3, and so forth, represent rows. And then if you click inside of one of those cells, I'm in cell right now, A1, because I'm the intersection of A1. I'm in B1, C1, and so forth. And then A, if you go A2, A3, but again, each one of those are cells. And in Excel, that's where you store a lot of the data when you type in the labels and the formulas and so forth. Those are going to be in the cells, not just in a Word document per se, but these are all the cells. Then down at the very bottom, you'll notice that I've got a lot of different tabs just for the classes, but you'll have usually just one tab, and that's called a worksheet. So I've got sheet number 1, and if you guys are walking along with these steps with me, you'll only see sheet 1. This is a sheet. You can have many sheets inside of what they call a workbook. So the entire file is called a workbook, and then you can have a bunch of sheets in there. So for example, if you're keeping track of yearly information, you might want separate sheets that represent each one of the months. So you might want a sheet for January, February, March, and so forth. But you want them all saved within one file, which is the workbook. That's one of the other really good benefits of Excel, is that you can have a lot of information in there that's related, but saved under one file. Okay, I'm going to pause for right now. Does anybody have any questions? Going to come back and chat and make sure, or you can also unmute yourself and ask questions if you have any questions. Okay, I will jump right back in. Okay, so what I want to do first is I want to create just a basic Excel spreadsheet. So this is going to be one, it's going to be the Animal Rescue League spreadsheet. I love animals, so I always use this as an example. Okay, so I typed again, I clicked inside of my first cell and typed in Animal Rescue League. And then I'm going to come down here to cell 3 and I sell dogs. And then you can either hit the enter key, the arrow key, or use your mouse. Like I said before, there's so many different ways that you can do the same thing in Excel. But I'm just going to use my arrow key to arrow down. And I'm going to type in cats. And then I also sell birds. And then I'm just going to arrow back up. And one more here. I'm going to keep my information for January. And I want to also keep it for February and March. This is one of the shortcuts that if you're not using the autofill, and that's what this feature is called, it will save you so much time on anything that's repetitive, like months, days of the week, formulas, it's huge on. So this autofill is going to be a feature that you want to make sure that you utilize if you're not already. So what I'm going to do is, I know this is a small spreadsheet, but I've got the title January. I want it to automatically fill in February and March. So what I'm going to do is, notice my mouse symbol right now is a big solid white plus. That's for selecting. If I want to click, if I want to select one of these, that's my mouse symbol for that. My mouse symbol, if I get right there on the corner, is a solid black plus. That's when you know you're on the autofill handle. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm right down there, and you can see that little box at the bottom right-hand corner. But I'm going to position my mouse on top of that, and I'm just going to hold down my left mouse button, click, hold, and drag over to the right. Now I can keep dragging if I want to, but I'm just going to drag over to the right for January, February, and March. Okay, Let me do this again. I'm going to just highlight those and delete them. Okay, I'm going to click again on this cell that contains the information that I want to use to autofill. I'm going to get my mouse right there on the bottom right-hand corner, and it's just a solid black plus. I'm going to click, hold, and drag over to the right. And it's going to fill in February and March. I will show you in just a little bit too when we do formulas. That's where you're going to really use the autofill handle. Instead of typing a formula over and over and over again, you type one and drag it over, and Excel knows to change that formula depending on where you drag it to. Okay, I'm just going to fill in some numbers here. These are all the animals that I sold for these months. Oops. Let me back up there. 12. Okay, there you go. 55. I had my hand on the wrong button. Okay. So again, what I'm doing is I'm just clicking inside of the cell where I want to type the information, and I'm using my arrows on my keyboard, my arrow that goes down or over. You can also use your mouse, so don't forget, if you want to use your mouse, you can do that also. Okay, what I usually do after I type just a little bit of information in Excel, I save it. It's just one of the safest things to do, because in Excel, that's probably one of the easiest programs that I mistakenly wipe out my data all the time. And so I do use this button right up here at the top left-hand corner. That's called the undo button. That undo button will be your best friend in Excel, because there's a lot of times accidentally I've got something highlighted and I accidentally hit the space bar and it looks like it wipes everything out. If you do this undo right there, it will take you back a step at a time. So that button is probably one of your best friends inside of Excel. Okay, so after I've typed this information in, I want to go ahead and save it. So what I do is I usually go up here to File at the top left-hand corner. And remember, that gets you back to the window, the very first window that you see. So you'll be familiar with this. But I want to come down and I just want to click on Save. And since I've already saved it before, it updates my saving. Okay, so if it's the first time that you've saved it, it's going to look like this. Let me just show you, and then I'll tell you the difference. Okay, so if it's the first time I've saved it, I'll go up and I'll click on Save, and it will come up here to this screen. And that's when I can click up here and give it a new name, and then I can save it where I want to. Now, since I've already saved this spreadsheet, it just saved it and it didn't look like it did much. So let me explain what the difference between save and save as is. I think I get this question quite often. Save is if you are saving it for the first time, you click on either save or save as, it will come up to this window right here because it has not been given a name yet. Once it's been given a name, if you come in here and you go to save as, you can give it a different name. You can save it to a different location. If you just do save, it's going to do what it did just a second ago. It just comes right back to my screen because it knows it's already been saved and it just updated all the things that I changed in it. Okay, so save and save as. The first time you save anything, they'll do the same thing because it hasn't been given a name. If you've already saved this file, save will just save the updates. Save as will allow you to either give it a different name, save it to a different location, change something about the naming convention of your spreadsheet. Okay, any questions? Okay, what I want to do next is I want to go on to just a little bit of basic formatting. So remember my home ribbon. This is where a lot of your information is going to be, all the features that you're going to want to use. That's really where I kind of hang out when I'm doing all of the formatting. So what I want to do is I'm going to come up here to cell A1. I'm going to click on it. I want to change Animal Rescue League and make it a little bit bigger and make it bold, because since it's the title and it's going to be right up there at the top, I want it to stand out just a little bit more. So I'm going to come up here and click on the B button for bold. And then up here, you've got the two A buttons. A will make it larger, and the A that has a down arrow will make it smaller. So I'm just going to click on the up arrow a couple times, and you'll notice it's changing the size. I didn't change the font. I didn't change anything else. I just changed to make it bold and then I made it a little bit bigger. I could also click on this drop down arrow and select here. Okay, but again, I get a little bit lazy when I'm formatting, and I'll just make it either larger or I'll make it smaller. Okay, now I want to go ahead and I'm going to select all of my titles. So I'm going to select January, February, and March. And what I'm doing is I'm just holding down my left mouse button and just clicking, holding, and dragging. So again, I just came up here and I clicked, held, and drug. And then I can select the cells that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and make those bold, but I'm going to change a little bit. I'm going to also come over here and change the color of it, just so you can see some of the different formatting that you can do. I'm going to click on this drop down arrow, and here's all the different colors that I can change about the font. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to, let's do purple. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for the titles over here, the dogs, cats, and birds. So I'm going to click, hold, and select. Let me, there we go. Oh, it is messing up on me right now. There we go. Okay. I just had to give it a little time to think a little bit. Okay, so again, I just came over and I'm selecting dogs, cats, and birds by holding down my left mouse button. And then I'm going to come back up here, click on the drop down arrow, and I'm going to make this purple. Let me do that again over here because I had to undo to get out of my mess there. I'm going to select January, February, March. I'm going to come up here, click on the drop down arrow, and I'm going to select purple again. And then that's how you can change some of the colors. This button to the left of that is the background fill, and this is the font color. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to change all these numbers, the format of the numbers. Right now, it just is looking like I sold 22 dogs in January, 12 dogs in February, but that's more of currency. That's the dollar amount that I sold. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to highlight again, click, hold, and drag to highlight all of those cells. And then here's all my number formats up here. And so this is the one I use quite a bit, the currency. So I'm going to click on the currency to turn that on. Okay. If for some reason you want to take that back to a basic number, if you click right here on the comma, that takes it back to more of a general number. And then you've got these two buttons over here that will either increase the decimal or decrease the decimal. So I can take it back to just a basic number. Okay. So I'll leave it like that for now. But again, there's a lot of different number formats that you can do to make those numbers look a little bit differently too. And don't forget, if you forget some of the steps that I'm using here, you can always use that undo button, which is up there on the top left-hand corner, to undo some of the things that you've taken, some of the steps that you've taken. Okay, I'm going to pause again here for any questions. Okay. What about the tab? Can you expand on that just a little bit? Oh, the tab key probably. Yes, you can definitely use the tab key if that's what you're talking about. So here, I'm just going to click on this. If I use the tab key, that'll tab over to the right. We come down here and use the tab key again. So you can use the tab key also. The tab key just only goes one direction. As a default, you can also change that, but the tab key just moves one over to the right. That's why I'm a mouse person, to be honest. I use the mouse quite a bit more, but I'll just use the mouse to be more selective, or the arrow keys are always easy for me because I can down arrow, up arrow, right or left arrow. It just seems a little bit easier for me. Okay, that was a great question. Okay, so alignment. There's going to be a lot of times where, if you'll notice, my January, February, and March doesn't look aligned over the numbers. It's more aligned to the left. As a default, Excel will align all your text to the left. Notice it's lined up here over on the left-hand side, but your numbers will be on the right. So there's going to be times when you might want to center things. You might want to maybe align them over to the left or to the right. So what I'm going to do is I want to center these titles, January and February and March, within their cell. So I'm going to, again, use my mouse to select January, February, and March. And if you'll notice up here under alignment, There are a lot of different things you can do under alignment. Right here is these 3 buttons are where it's aligned vertically in the cell. And right now, I don't have a whole lot of room in my cells. I'll show you in just a little bit what that will do, but it's just vertically, it's just perfect how it is right now. But these 3 will do horizontally. So this is align left, here's center, and here's align right. So I want to center January, February, and March. So I'm just going to click on the center button. And do you see how it centers it? Let me show you what it does if I click on right. There's center again. And I can also do left. So let me just do, I'm going to go ahead and do center. Okay. Now, let me show you these, because these buttons you will use a lot if you make the rows a little bit wider. So let me make row number 2 a little bit wider. As a default, all the rows are the same size and the columns are the same size. But there might be times where you might want to make row 1 a little bit wider, maybe row 2. Or I'm going to also show you how you can make them all wider at once. So I just want to make row 2 a little bit wider. Remember how I was talking about these are the row headings and these are the column headings? If you want to resize a row or a column, you need to be over in that gray area. If it's a row, over on the gray area on the left, or if it's a column, the gray area at the top. So I'm going to come down here. Remember, I want to make row 2 a little bit wider. So I'm going to position my mouse in this gray area over to the left, and notice my mouse symbol now is a double-headed arrow with a line through it. That is a symbol for resizing. So I'm going to get my mouse just right there on the line in between row 2 and 3, click, hold, and drag, and I've just resized row number 2. If I want to go back up, I click, hold, and drag to go back up. Same thing with a column. If you want to resize a column, you can get right here again on the line in between the column that you want to resize and just click, hold, and drag over to the right or to the left. Okay. If I want to do more than one, so let's say I want to resize row 2, 3, 4, and 5, I can select all of them just by clicking, holding, and dragging down to select all of the rows. And again, the key thing here is I'm over in the gray area where the rows are, where the row numbers are. Then I'm going to click on one of these lines and resize it. And I've just resized all of them. Again, don't worry so much about the steps. I'm going to make sure that you guys have all my email address after. Just know there's no need for you to go through and resize one row at a time or one column at a time. You can actually resize or do a lot of things at once. So there's a lot of things inside of Excel that you can do that. If I wanted to select all, do you see this button up here, the intersection of the row heading 1 and column heading A? This button right there selects the entire spreadsheet. No matter how big it is, I know everything in there is selected. And that's when I can come in and resize maybe every single row or every single column. Okay. So again, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit there, but I want you guys to see there's so many shortcuts in Excel that will save you a huge amount of time. You've just got to make sure that you don't just waste your time resizing every row. Just make sure that you reach out and there's an easy way to do that. Okay, so let me resize this row number 2. And do you see how January and February and March, by default, they line up at the bottom of that cell? Maybe I want them in the center. So vertically aligned in the center. I'm going to go ahead and highlight these 3. That's what these buttons up here are for. So I'm going to just click on the center button so I can middle align those in the cells. Okay. And again, all this is just trying to make it look a little bit prettier than what it is. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that, but some of you just might want to just type in the basic information, do some formulas and get it printed. But again, there's a lot of different buttons up there that you can use to align and change the font. Okay, moving and copying. This is something that you'll do quite a bit where you're going to want to move things or you're going to want to copy things. Moving, I do a lot in Excel. I might want to move some numbers. Maybe I mistyped those in there or I want to move them a little bit. To move anything, and let me just do the 66. The symbol, the mouse symbol, is the four-way arrow. So when you click on a cell and you want to move it, you've just got to come on here on the somewhere on the border and see that four-way arrow. Click, hold, and drag. That's how you can quickly move. Just click, hold, and drag. If I want to move a lot of them, let's say I want to move all three of these for whatever reason, I'm going to select these three cells. And again, the mouse symbol is what's key. I've got to get right on the edge, and it's the four-way arrow that allows me to move. Okay. Now you can move entire columns, you can move rows, you can do a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to show you that today, but just know, again, there's no need to retype anything if you've accidentally put it in the wrong row or the wrong cell. It's really easy for you guys to just move it. I'm going to also show you at the very end some keyboard shortcuts. If you guys are more keyboard people, if you just want to move something, you can do a Control X to cut it and Control V to paste it. So I'll get to that in just a little bit. But moving and copying, again, it's going to be just highlighting what you want. I'm going to get that four-way arrow and move it over. Okay, and I'll show you the keyboard shortcuts that are easier for the copying part of it in just a little bit. But if you'll notice, one of the big things with Excel is knowing what mouse symbols do what. So let me just repeat that again. So this fat white plus, yours might not be as big as mine. I just wanted you all to see this, but the plus is going to be selecting. This is where I can click inside of a cell to start typing. This is where I can select up here just by clicking. Then you have the autofill handle, which is again the bottom right-hand corner. That symbol is going to be a solid black plus, and you'll know you're on that handle. If you want to resize, that's the double-headed arrow. If you want to move, that's the four-way arrow. Okay, so a lot of different mouse symbols do a lot of different things, and I think that's one of the biggest hurdles in Excel is knowing where to kind of position your mouse in order to do what you need to do. Okay, let's do some basic formulas, but before I do that, let me check back and see if there's any questions. Okay, the enter key too, you guys, will also move, so that's another great suggestion. So if I'm hitting, like I click on this number right here, if I hit the enter key, it goes down, and the tab key goes to the right. Enter goes down, and tab goes to the right. So another great suggestion. And again, all of us will do it a little bit different. There's, like I said, 4 to 5 different ways of doing the same thing in Excel. So just kind of maybe get comfortable with the way that you want to do it. Okay, formulas. I think this is one of the things from teaching this class before. It's one of the main things that you guys all want to know. And formulas are pretty basic. Okay, I sum, I subtract, I divide, or I multiply. There are so many formulas. You can do lookups, you can do averages, you can do any kind of formula that you want to in here. But the majority of the time, you're going to be subtracting, multiplying, adding, and dividing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, when I want to do a formula, I'm going to click inside of the cell where I want the formula to be. And it's going to be an empty cell because there's no information there right now. That's where I want my answer to be. So let's say, for example, I want to add 22, 55, and 88, and I want my total to be right there inside of cell B6. Okay, so I clicked in that cell. There is a button up here at the top right-hand corner, and it's the little sum button. That's the button that I use for adding. It's just so much easier because Excel knows what it thinks we want it to do. I'm going to click on that sum button. And if you'll notice down here, it's kind of disco dancing a little bit around those 3 cells. So Excel thinks that if you click and there's numbers above it, it automatically assumes you want to add those numbers above it. Unless there's an empty cell that breaks it up, then it will kind of stop and it will say, okay, I think you just want to add these cells because there's an empty cell. So you might have to go back in, and I'll show you in just a second how to select them. But by default, when you do a sum in Excel, it automatically first looks ahead or on top. And if there's cells on top, it will think those are the cells that you want to add. which in this case, that's correct. So you can either, again, click on the sum button or the enter key, either one. And there's my number. Let me do that again. I'm going to delete this. Step number 1 in creating a formula is click inside of the empty cell where you want your answer to be. Step number 2, for adding, I'm going to come up to this sum button at the top right-hand corner and click it once. Then I just kind of double check to make sure that it's selected the right cells that I want to add, which is the 22, 55, and 88. And I'm going to click on the auto sum button again. And there's my answer. Now remember with formulas, and this is where a lot of people spend a lot of time, they'll come over here and do the exact same steps and the exact same steps again. Don't forget that autofill handle. It's gonna, again, like I did earlier, it fills in the months, it can fill in the days, but more importantly, it does formulas. So after you do one formula, like I did right here, and notice in my formula bar, it doesn't have the answer like it does here. It has the formula that's in there. So it's kind of nice to be able to look up there and to see what the formula is too. But I'm going to go ahead and position my mouse on the autofill handle. And again, it's that solid black plus. And I'm just going to go ahead and click, hold, and drag to the right and lit up. And notice it automatically knew to add these, and then automatically changed the formula to add that column. Okay, let me do this again. So I'm going to go ahead. I want to add now all my dogs. So I'm going to click inside of the empty cell where I want my answer to be. I'm going to, number 2, click on the sum button. Number 3, again, notice Excel is smart enough. It doesn't see any numbers on top, so it goes over to the left. And that's right. Those are the numbers I want to add. So I click on the auto sum button again. Get right there on my autofill handle. And here's a shortcut for you guys that have already used the auto handle. You can, when going down, you can double click on that and it will do the formulas all the way down. Now it stopped here just because this is a different formula. It's going from top instead of left. But if you double click, let me delete those. Again, I get right on my first formula, I double click, and it will copy that formula all the way down. Or you can do what I just told you and just click, grab the autofill handle, and drag it down. Okay? Any questions about the auto sum before I get into selecting different cells that are not adjacent and in the other formulas? Okay. Okay. Now there are going to be times when you don't want the cells that Excel is picking up for you to add. So let's say again, for whatever reason, I'm going to click over here inside of this cell, and this is where I'm going to do the formula. For whatever reason, I want to add just January and March. That's all I want to do. So I'm going to, again, step number 1 is always clicking in the empty cell where you want your answer to be. Step number 2 is selecting the formula. For this case, it's the sum, the auto sum button. Now notice again, it thinks it knows what I want to select, and it goes over to the left and it kind of stops because that's a formula. So there's a lot of different weird things that Excel will do on its own that I don't like. But instead what I want to do is I want to select the cells that I want. So I'm going to come over here and click on the first cell. And then the control key is really a great key if you want to select non-adjacent cells. So I'm going to now hold down my control key, select the second cell. And this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm just adding January and February, but I want to walk through the steps. But I want those two to be added together. And then I'm going to either hit the enter key or the auto sum button again. Okay, let me walk through that again. So there's going to be a lot of times in Excel where when you do a formula, Excel automatically is thinking that you want to select cells that you might not want to select. So step number 1, click inside of the empty cell where you want your answer to be. Step number 2, I'm going to come up here to this auto sum. Step number 3, see, look at what it's doing now. It's selecting the formula above it. So that's not what I want to add. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to click on the first cell that I want to add, hold down the control key, click on the second cell that I want to add, and hit enter. Okay. Any questions? And you can unmute yourself and speak up if there's any questions there. Okay, let me show you another example. Maybe, again, I'm going to select the cell that I want my answer to be. I'm going to click the sum button. Maybe I want these 3 cells. I can just, like I did before, just click, hold, and drag also. Maybe I want those 3 in a row. I'm going to click, hold, and drag. And then again, you can either hit the enter key or the auto sum button. Okay, and again, these formulas are not making any sense, so don't worry about why I'm doing it, but actually the steps that I'm doing. I'm just going to delete those since those made no sense whatsoever. I put a total there, so that makes a little bit more sense. Okay. So that's summing, and again, that's an easy way to sum. They're right there, that you've got a button. But if you want different formulas like subtraction, division, or multiplication, you're going to type those in. It's so much easier to do than go to the function, the formula function. So let's say, for example, here, I'm just going to click on cell B7. And for whatever reason, I want to take this cell and subtract it from this one. Okay. So again, don't worry about why I'm doing that. I just want you to see the same steps for each one. So number 1, I click inside of the cell where I want my answer to be. And on your keyboard, if you hit the equal key, it knows that you're going to start a formula. That's indicating to Excel that you want to start a formula. So I'm going to hit the equal key. I'm going to select the first cell that I want. And for subtraction, it's going to be the little hyphen. So I want to take B6, which is this 165, and I want to subtract, for whatever reason, 22 from it. And I'm going to hit enter. And there's my answer. So again, here, let me walk through those steps again. Step number 1 is always to click in the empty cell where you want your answer to be. Step number 2, hit the equal key on your keyboard. Step number 3, select the first cell that you want. Step number 4 is type in the symbol, and I'll show you the other symbols in just a second, but for subtraction, it's just the hyphen. Step number 5, select the second cell that you want in your formula. And the last step is to hit the enter key. Let me show you. Right here are what the symbols are. So for subtraction, it's going to be a hyphen. For multiplication, it's going to be a little asterisk, the little star. And then for division, it's going to be the slash. Okay. So let me do these examples again so you can see the difference, and you'll be able to see them up in the formula bar too. So let's say for this subtraction example, I want to take 10 and minus 5 and get the answer. So step number 1, I click inside of the empty cell. Step number 2, I hit the equal. Step number 3, I click on the first cell that I want. Step number 4, I click on this symbol, which is a little hyphen. And then step number 5, I click on the second cell that I want. And then the last step is to hit the enter key. Now let's do the multiplication example. It's the same exact steps. Step number 1 is equal. Step number 2, select your first cell. Step number 3, select the symbol, which is going to be that little star. And it's on mine, it's Shift 8. Step number 5 is going to be select the second cell you want in your formula. And the last step is hit the enter key. Okay, let me do the division. Step number 1, equal. Step number 2, select the first cell that you want in your formula. Then type in the symbol, which is going to be the backslash there. Then select the second cell and hit enter. So these 3, let me make them bold so you can see them a little bit better. But these 3 are the answers. So look it up in my formula bar. There is B5 minus C5, B6 multiplied by C6. Do you see how those formulas look? And then B7 divided by C7. And there's my answers. You can even take these formulas, you guys, even further. I mean, if you want to take it multiplied by 20%, let me show you this. And I'm jumping a little ahead because I usually show this in the second class, but I want you guys to start thinking about how you can really use a lot of these really basic formulas to get what you want. So let's say here, I want to take 5 and I want to multiply it by 2. I just want to double it. So again, I clicked inside the cell where I wanted my formula to be, equal. I'm going to click on the first cell. I want to do the multiplication, but I don't want to multiply it by another cell. I just want to multiply it by a number. So I'm just going to multiply it by 2 and hit enter. You can do 0.20 for 20%. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to use 2 cells in a formula. You can use 1 cell and multiply it by a number, and then just copy that down if you want to also. So I get that question. Do you always have to type in the numbers in a cell before they can be used in a formula? And the answer is no. You can type in any number that you want. Okay. Any questions? Because I know I just went over a bunch. Here, let me see here. And yes, you have to hold down the control. So when you're selecting 2 non-adjacent cells, let me come back up here. Okay, so I'm going to click here. So let's say, for example, I want to take 10 and add it by 50. So I'm going to go ahead, and since there's this auto sum button up here, I use this for summing. It's just so much easier. So I'm going to click on the auto sum, and I'm not holding down anything right now. I'm going to first click on the first cell that I want, and now I'm going to hold down my control key and click on the second cell I want, and then you can either hit enter or the auto sum. So you only hold down the control key after you select the first cell. Okay, let me do that again. Sum, I'm going to select the first cell that I want, hold down the control key, and select the second cell. That's a great question or reminder for me, that control key and shift key. The shift key will allow you, and let me just show you this too. The shift key will allow you to select a large range. So if I hold down, or I click on the first cell that I want to select, hold down the shift key and click on the last cell. Maybe I want to make all of those purple for whatever reason. I just can come up here now, make every one of those numbers purple all at once. Okay, so again, I just clicked on the first cell that I wanted to select. I held down my shift key. That purple's giving me a hard time here. Let me hit escape or undo. Okay, but you hold down the first key. There, it's coming. Hold down shift. I'll click on the first cell, hold down shift, and click on the last cell to select a group of cells. Okay, so again, in Excel, you don't have to do one at a time. If you want to do a big group or non-adjacent, the control key will allow you to select non-adjacent cells to either format, center, formulas, whatever you want to do. The shift key will allow you to select 2 cells and then everything in between. Okay. And what I keep doing, you guys, when this is kind of messing up and hanging up on me, I'm hitting my escape key at the top left-hand corner of my keyboard. And for some reason, that kind of gets me out of trouble with whatever I'm doing. So I'm not sure if it's Excel for me or what's going on with it hanging up on me a little bit. But what I'm doing behind the scenes here is I'm hitting my escape key, my ESC key, a couple times. It kind of gets me out of whatever's going on. Okay, I've got about 15 more minutes. So what I want to show you guys is I want to show you how to preview, print, and then open up a spreadsheet. So let me come back. Notice again down here, we were talking about tabs before. I had, because of this class, I'd already set up these tabs with different examples. You will probably only have a sheet 1, but if you do want to add more sheets, how I added these more sheets is I clicked on this little plus over to the right. Let me show you. Now, when I do that, Oh, it won't do it on mine. Okay, but because I'm in share mode. But when you click on that plus, it will actually add another sheet that will say sheet 2. And then what I did was I just came down and I double clicked and renamed it formulas. Came down here on keyboards and double clicked and named it keyboard shortcut. So let's look at sheet 1. Maybe I want to rename that just example. I'm just going to double click and type an example. For whatever reason, that's what I want to name my sheet. That's what it just named it. Okay, so this is where you can have January, February, March, April. But again, maybe your overall file is called budget 2022. Okay, so it's all right there. In the next class too, and we talk in the formulas class, how to add from sheet to maybe get that total sheet, that 13th sheet, to add all the 12 months of information. Okay, so to print, let me show you this. I created, and take a picture of this, or I can even email this to you. These are the most basic keyboard shortcuts that I use that save a lot of time. And one of them is Control P for print. So if you hold down the Control key on your keyboard and hit the P key on your keyboard, let me just show you, Control P, it will automatically bring up my print window. And then I could click on print if I wanted to. Let me go back here. Control S, I use that a lot because remember how I said first type in some information, and I'll type in just a few cells and I save it right away. But if I've been sitting here working on this spreadsheet for half an hour, I will over and over again, even though it will automatically save every so often in Excel, I'm still kind of paranoid about it. I'll do Control S, and you'll notice it doesn't look like it does anything, but it is saved up to this point now. So Control S is kind of like my security. It will save. Control Z is undo, just like this arrow right up there at the top. It's the same thing. It's just a keyboard shortcut. I use that again in some other programs. Control Z will still work. I might not have that arrow, but knowing Control Z is really helpful. Control C is copy. Control X is cut. V is paste, and I can walk through that too with you guys in the next class. And then Control B, U for underline, I for italicize, P for print, N for new, and O for open. One that I just did this right before I got on this session with you guys, Control F, as in Frank, is find. And I was just in another program that nobody would even know. And I needed to find something in there really quick. And I just did Control F, and it always brings up a box where I can look for something. I do that if I'm out on the internet and I've come to maybe a website and I want to search for something in that website specific. Control F will always bring up that little window where you can type in where you want to search, so you don't have to eyeball the whole thing. But here's some of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. And again, Control P is one of the quickest ways that you can print. You can preview and then go ahead and print. But if you like to do it through the menu, under File is where a lot of this is. There's print. There's if you want to publish it, and that's a whole other thing if you want to export it. But right here is where you can also get to print this way. So like I said, you notice again, there's so many different ways of doing it in here. Just whatever you're comfortable with. Either way, if I went up to File and Print or Control P, it is the exact same thing. I'm getting to the exact same window. So neither one of them are going to mess up or give me something that I don't want. Okay, let me go back to example. And let me see if there are any other questions. Okay. So let me do this. I've got just a little bit of time left. I just wanted to again, there are so many things that you guys can do inside of Excel, and you can do charts and pivot tables and all this kind of crazy stuff for reporting purposes. Let's say, for example, here, let me clean this up just a little bit. Since I've got time, I'm going to just show you something like this. Okay. Okay, I just want to make it really easy. And I've got dogs, cats, birds, January, February, and March. Let's say that I want to make it look, and I want to see kind of a pie chart or a bar chart. I want it to see more visual, what you can do is I'm going to come up here to insert, and there are charts and pivot tables. I'll get to pivot tables in the next section. That's more of a really advanced reporting tool. But charts, if I click right here, let me do the bar chart. I think this will be better. I'm going to click on bar chart. Okay. Look at how this looks. So I've got January, February, and March, dogs, cats, and birds. Let me kind of move this over here so you can see. I'm going to resize this just a little bit. Okay, see, here's one of those times where I messed up. So I'm going to come back over here to home, and I'm going to do the undo to get back with what I messed up. That was a great example. Okay, so a lot of people are visual. So if you're creating a spreadsheet and you're presenting it to somebody, or you want it to really make sense to everybody, not only will the numbers make sense, but looking at it in a chart or more of a visual way will make sense. So this is something that you can do in Excel. And all I did, let me hit delete again. I was just somewhere in the data. I can select all of it, but I just click inside the data. I went to insert, and then over here are all the charts, and you can just kind of play around with these a little bit. I like the bar chart. I'm going to click on that chart, and let me do another one that's a little bit fancier. Let me do this one, the 3D column chart. Okay, and here's my 3D. So it's showing me with January with the dogs, cats, and birds. You can kind of see very easily. It's very visual. I can see that my birds did really good for whatever reason. And then in March, my dogs kind of started to pick up a little bit. But in January and February, we were not selling, or not a whole lot of dogs were being adopted. So again, it's so much easier to see it with that. And since, again, it's selected, you can see that the little tiny handles are around it. I'm just going to hit delete to delete it. Okay. Any questions about anything that I have covered up to now? It's a lot. Okay. And again, you guys just know that, let me give you my email address. My email address is ccase@walton.uark.edu. So it's CCASE@walton.uark.edu. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, now here's some more information for you also. So you've got some contact information to call us. The QR code over there on the top left-hand corner. If you scan that, you can find more information. But don't forget to utilize our services. They're complimentary, and we've got some really great experts over at ASBTDC. But if you want to visit us at sbtdc.uark.edu. And then also don't forget to look us up on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We've got a lot of great information up on there too, but we've got saved webinars. We've got just so much information for you guys out there. If you just go to our website, that would be amazing. But thank you guys all so much for coming today. I know it's a lot of information, but just keep in mind with Excel, if you know what Excel can do, the steps are secondary. I just want you to see that Excel is so powerful with what you can do. But I hope you all stay safe out there today, and I will see you hopefully next time. Bye, everybody. Make sure nobody else has any questions. And no, it's not the same email from the, Julie sends out the email But you can also reply to that email, and Julie and I work very closely together. She can send you my information too. So you can email that, or let me type in what. Yep, want to make sure that's correct. There we go. There's my email address. And you know what? The Excel versions might look different, Manuel. So if you have any questions, email me and we can hop on a private Zoom and look over some information. But Excel will look different depending on the versions. And I've got the latest version, so that might be the same thing. But still, even though it looks different, everything that I talked about in here, the buttons are probably still there, but maybe a little bit differently. So make sure you email me and we can set up a session, and I can actually, you can share your screen with me so I can walk you through some stuff on your version of Excel too. Yeah, go ahead and email me at the one, let's see, let me, right there, at ccase@walton.uark.edu. Yeah, and it wouldn't take long for me to go over your different things and why it's different. I'm not sure what version that would be, but they've got a lot of different versions out there. And you might, Manuel, you might even be using maybe Google Sheets instead too. And that is, it's still a spreadsheet, but it's made from Google instead of Microsoft. So we could still go over that too. Yep, Open Office it is. If you can tell, I love Excel and I love helping people with Excel. It's just so much to do, and an hour just didn't give it justice.